Okay. And you know, I can bring that side to listen. Yes. But these two are definitely.
Well, good morning. Good morning. I'm Noah Lindsay, and I'm the instructor in this course. And in case you might be in the wrong place, this is American history from about the 1400 to 1861 through the Civil War. The course number is AMH 2020. Is that what's on your registration form? I hope so. If it's not, you're not supposed to be here. I want to begin with a word or two about myself. All of you are familiar with Canvas, I hope. I've posted a biography of myself, so if you want to know more about me, you can read the story there in Canvas. It runs about 2 pages. It'll tell you too much information. And one of the things it tells you is I like to travel, I like to sing, and I like to perform on stage. And so that will fill out the details on that. It'll also tell you where I came from, where I was educated, and how long I've been teaching here, and all that sort of stuff. If you want to know more about it, come by and see me in my office, room 118, across the hall atrium in the library. We've got a lot of stuff to try to cover today. I know some of you are in your first meetings of other instructors. They call the roll and let you go and say, I'll see you next meeting. Well, I'm not going to do that. I have a lot of things to do, and we will try to cover all of them in the allotted time if my voice holds out. I hope you picked up at least 5 of the things that I had out for you. We will be using 5 of those today, and the other 5 are for future classes and your next assignments. And they are all posted in Canvas, so if you have available a printer, as all of you do, if not at home, here in the library, where you can print most anything that's in Canvas. Let's see. First of all, you have a 3x5 card. I'm not going to call the roll. I've got a roll, but I'm not going to call it. Instead, I want to collect some information from you. If you have a 3x5 card, let me have the following information, please. First of all, on the top red line, put last name first and first name middle, and then in parentheses put in the nickname you have that you might want to be addressed. I will not address you by that name, but I would like to know that your nickname is Buddy. No, you can't have Buddy. That's my nickname. And don't you use it either. I prefer to be addressed as Mr. Lindsay, or Noah, or Professor, or Prof, or Hey You, or something like that. I do not like being addressed as Mr. Noah. And I'm sure some of you will do it just to spite me. Okay, next thing on the 3x5 card, tell me a phone number where I can reach you. Followed on the next line by an email address, not your Wolves account here in the college. I want another email address where I can reach you. Next, I would like to know your background, high school you attended, or if you are a homeschooled or dual enrollment. And by the way, learn to spell dual. And then next, something of a career goal, what you're hoping for, what you're aiming at in the way of a career. And then last, this probably won't apply to many or any of you. If you have a certified disability of any sort, this is the place to let me know that, particularly if it involves hearing, so that I can make proper accommodations for you. I think that'll be all. Just be sure I get this card before you leave. This is proof of your attendance today. I will be using my watch to sort of time myself so that we can get out and so that you can make it over to the hall for games and things. But if you want to time me, I've got 11 after 10. And let's see, next, textbooks. You may not yet have a textbook. There are two. We have been using Carnes and Garrity for many years. This is the 15th edition, and what I'm holding is the double edition that can be used for the second part of American history as well. You probably will not invest in a big one like this. And they are available, I think, now even in a loose-leaf 3-ring binder variety in our bookstore. And if you have access to a 13th or 14th edition, you may use it, but it's up to you to make sure you're reading the correct assignment, because Garrity and Carnes have updated and even changed the numbering on some. So be careful if you use. And by the way, I have some older ones in my office if you want to borrow them. The other textbook is also a 2-volume thing, but I only have the 1 volume. And this is Unger and Tomes, or I don't know if he pronounces it Thomas. This is a documentary or a primary source material recently adopted. And you will have writing assignments that involve interpreting or commenting some documents from this. And when you look over your assignment sheets, you'll have 6 little reports that you have to make on some document from these. We'll say more about assignments a little bit later. Be sure you get volume 1 now when you go to the bookstore. You've picked up 5 handouts, one of which is a glossary, and on the back of it is a schedule of meetings, if I can find mine. Where is it? I go through this all the time. I spend way too much of my time separating one page of paper from another page of paper. Ah, here we go. On this side is a glossary of some terms that we will spend some time with before this period ends. We won't go over everything on it by any means. Some of these are sort of reserved for later chapters when it seems more appropriate to discuss them. But some of them we'll get around to today, asking you, what is your definition of these things? And I'll give you mine. And we'll spend much of our last minutes of the period with some of that. On the back of that is a tight little schedule of assignments for the term. And you will notice that there are 5 exams scheduled and 9 different little papers, plus all the holidays and all that sort of stuff. Keep this with you the whole semester. Did you hear me? We will make reference to this. And next thing. buy some blue books. I mentioned in passing a moment ago that we will have 5 exams. I'm the only teacher, I'm a dinosaur. I'm the only teacher on this faculty that still uses blue exam books. And after I'm gone, they'll have a surplus of these that they don't know what to do with in the bookstore. But they have some now, and you should get at least 5, one for each of the exams, plus an extra that you could, if your final exam will run sort of long, you may need 2 of these. So buy these. I think they cost about 40-something cents a piece. If you come to class and don't have one, you can beg for one from your fellow classmates, or I will sell you one for 50 cents. I'm retiring on what I've raised off of that. Okay, so much for blue books. And let's see. I mentioned that there's a biography of me, but I'm not going to refer much to that. I do want to say something about my personal philosophy. I consider myself socially and politically and economically, I guess, a liberal in most things. And I have changed. That's a key word in the study of history. I have changed over the years. I think I've grown, certainly in my waistline, but I think I have evolved, and I hope and I believe every teacher that stands in front of a class should make some difference in the life of their students. I don't believe I've ever taught a class in which I didn't learn something in the process. I believe it is my responsibility to give you some glimpse and vision of a larger world, to enlarge your horizons and your vision of what it means to be a thinking, caring human being. And I hope I contribute a little something to that during the course of the term. I think every teacher should be involved in teaching vocabulary. And sometimes I will write a word. Do you know that word? And I'll write it on the board, and I'll give it to you if you don't already have it. It's quite all right for you to come to me later and say, Mr. Lindsay, what was that word you used? And I will, if I can recall, I'll try to give it to you again. By the way, speaking of stuff I've said in my lectures, it's quite all right for you to record with the modern technology that you have, but I would appreciate your letting me know if you intend to record my remarks. About vocabulary, I'm very happy that as a part of my life, I've gained new appreciation every year. That 4 years of high school, I had 2 years of Latin and 2 years of French, and some of it will show up on these boards during the semester. There are certain Latin expressions that are just a part of history, of interpreting history, and we'll run into some of them. And one of my favorites, ex nihil fit. Nice Latin. And because this, I think it says a lot about even my philosophy. From nothing, nothing comes. You can't get nothing from nothing. So if you get something, if there is a product, it came from something. There is causation. There is origin for it if you've received something from it. We'll be bringing up that term in connection with some other things at the appropriate time. A part of my philosophy is that I try to respect other people and their views. I recognize that we have different origins and different thoughts and different exposures, things we've picked up and learned. I want to be tolerant of that. I try to be, at least when I'm discussing things with you in front of you. If you come to my office, we might disagree on something. I try to be a good example of grammar, though there will be an occasion in which I will lapse into some Southern speech, which I hope all of you understand. I am a citizen. I'm a citizen of Lake City. I'm a citizen of Florida. I'm a citizen of the United States. And in the last 4 decades, I have come to think of myself as a citizen of the world. And I hope that some of you may experience that same growth of your humanity. I believe in trying to save our planet and recycle stuff. And I love the bumper sticker that said, "Save our planet. It's the only one with chocolate." But there are lots and lots and lots of reasons why we should try to save our planet. I continue to learn. Just this week, I was reading something that said we are, the study of history involves time. That's so obvious I should not have to say it. But our concept of time has changed. And the thing that surprised me recently that I read, we are the creators of time. Our awareness of the progression of life on the planet. We are the creatures that is our definition as a human being, that we are aware of time, of the passage of time. I don't think other creatures are nearly as aware of, have any sense of it. And I also think as human beings we are the only species that, and here's my definition, we're the only species that while safe, well-fed, and healthy, we still are aware that we're going to die. No other species knows this. Oh, sure. A dog seeing a big truck running down, whoops, that's it for me. But remember my 3 things. Even while safe, healthy, and well-fed, we know we're going to die. And this has influenced almost everything that we have done. That and the awareness of the passage of consciousness that we call time. Okay, let's see, what else? Can we get to this stuff? Okay, I hope you have, most of you. I want to begin with asking you about a definition of history. Somebody tell me, what is history? Okay, Adrian.
The written account of the past.
What was the first word?
A written account of the past.
A written, she gets to the core of things pretty quickly, doesn't she? The key word in that was written and past. Yes, that's part of a good definition of history, written. I would like to add some other things to it, but some of you may have come up with something that we need to qualify it a little further.
Recorded.
That it written, recorded, in some, well, I think that implies those are pretty much the same thing.
Well, this video is not.
Well, with modern technology, record means a lot of different things. But I would like to get from you the idea that history requires some thought, that there is it's a reasoned account. But unfortunately, through much of history, the people who wrote, recorded, weren't very objective. And most of the primary source material that we have, if you look at it even superficially, you will detect bias, prejudice, point of view, slant, whatever you want to call it. Yet, it is those primary sources that we absolutely have to rely on. And so, the work of the historian is to examine primary sources to see if you could establish some facts that hold up to scrutiny and examination in spite of obvious bias or such. It is the historian that sifts through primary sources and tries to achieve some measure of objectivity. Oh dear. Clearly, through most of history, records of the past have been used, and this goes into use of history. What is the use of history? History has been used to shape, mold the present, and even into the future. Rulers of various stripes have made use of history. You have the cartoon. The king says to his courtier, seize or kill the historians. He's concerned about his legacy. And rulers throughout history have tried, depending on their level of power over their state, country, whatever, they've tried to control their record. I'm surprised we didn't say, oh, maybe I should just go ahead and say it in the interest of time and my voice. History is not identical with the past. That should be obvious. It's someone's selected, recorded view of the past. And this brings us to the element of truth, which is one of the terms on your list. I try not to ever say something in history is absolute truth. I may slip up sometime and say it. The reason being, I believe that our view, it is true that the past cannot be changed, and therefore the past is true. It does not change. But our view, our knowledge of the past can change, does change, according to research, and our present needs. We have need of some knowledge of the past. We couldn't function without it. So we have to deal with how much of the past do we need to know. And here we get to some of the other terms down there that talk about the level of society and the culture and the civilization that we are examining or studying. We live in the United States, and fortunately, we have a high degree of freedom of the press. Some of you might want to question that, but I believe we do. We are what is called an open society. We are free. Historians are free to publish any sort of thing they wish. This is why after the Civil War, the defeated rebels had the freedom to write their version of the Civil War. And this freedom of the press is only limited, I think, economically or in the marketplace. We have used Carnes and Garrity year after year after year because we think, on balance, it is relatively free of bias and it holds up in the marketplace. If there were better textbooks, we would have tried to bring them in and have them adopted. Adolf Hitler has been quoted as saying, "Give me control of the textbooks and I will control the state." Political leaders, from kings and emperors and dictators and demagogues throughout history, have made use of history as an instrument to control by limiting people's access to information. I said I don't use the word truth. History deals in facts, and I can give you my definition of a fact. That's on your list. A fact, a historian says, is established when two independent primary sources, perhaps with different prejudices and biases, both agree on some event, that such and such person was shot and killed or fled from the battle or whatever. And they say it only takes two. But what if later we find other primary sources? We examine them to see if they have bias, but what if they say about that event, no, it didn't happen that way? Sometimes we have to shift our view. I'm reading right now, and I read a few pages last night, and I hope you are readers. I'm reading The Fiery Trial, I believe that's the title. It's the evolution of Abraham Lincoln's views on slavery. He just didn't suddenly in 1863 issue the Emancipation Proclamation. It evolved. His own thinking on it, and this book points that out. And the author has, Eric Foner, I believe is his name, he points to sources that I don't think I'd ever heard before. And what a tortuous journey it was for Abraham Lincoln to evolve to the point. So my own thinking about Lincoln is sort of changing as I have read this, as I'm reading this book. And I hope you will eventually get to the point where you seek out books that help you to grow in your thinking. Maybe that's enough about maybe we want to turn to the inventory and have some fun. Lighten up. I've been too heavy here. You've got the inventory. I hope I've got one somewhere. I can go get one. This is to find out what you already know about American history. What do you bring to it already from high school history or from your college level? Excuse me, I have to get one. All right, we start with presidents. It's amazing how many people think that they know our presidents. Whoops, I do have to take the cap off. Okay. We start out in the first yes, no's. And I want to hear some answers. Was John Adams ever a president? Yes. Oh, good. Daniel Webster? No. Oh, boy, y'all doing great. James Garfield? Yes. Okay. Benjamin Franklin? No. Henry Clay? No. Oh, somebody's got a cheat sheet. I must have left one with all the answers.
We're working together.
Well, you're permitted to work together. William Henry Harrison?
Yes.
For 1 month.
For 1 month. I told you to keep quiet. History professor. Shortest presidency in our history. William Howard Taft?
Yes.
No. Douglas MacArthur? No. But, oh Lord, he wanted it. But he couldn't bring himself to say so. Here, this is historians interpreting all of his other utterances and actions and so forth. But he wanted to just be handed the presidency. And that didn't happen. Andrew Johnson?
Yes.
Okay. Martin Van Buren?
Yes.
Oh, wow, we all ought to do fine. Warren G. Harding?
Yes.
I always have to do my little tidbit here. What does the G stand for in his name? Anybody know? It's a biblical name, and I think it's only mentioned once in the Bible. Huh? No. His middle name was Gamaliel. Gamaliel. Oh, see, I grew up in a Baptist household and learned a lot of Bible when I was growing up. I've forgotten much of it, but I remember this. Gamaliel is mentioned once. Paul the Apostle says he was a student of Gamaliel, of the Jewish scholar Gamaliel, that he had studied at the feet of Gamaliel. So Gamaliel was a teacher. Okay, but Harding was one of our presidents. Yes, Millard Fillmore. Yes. Oh, I thought something about that. Zachary Taylor. Yes. James Buchanan. Yes. Alexander Hamilton. No, but he's a star on television and Broadway. Broadway. John Tyler. Yes. I always have to tell this little anecdote. About 40 years ago, there used to be a TV program, I've Got a Secret. And they had blindfolded panel, and some young man, about 35 or 40 years old, showed up. And the panelists just absolutely were stumped. And it turned out this young man's secret was he was John Tyler's grandson. And they were jaw-dropping because the generation, John Tyler was president 1841 to 45. After he was the first accidental president. And he had several marriages, and one of them, even after his presidency, he had children born to a second or third marriage, like when he was 60 or 70 years old or something like this. Anyway, this young man was his grandson. Generations, there are not many generations of American history when you come down to it. James Madison?
Yes.
Ulysses Grant? Yes. William Jennings Bryan? No, but oh God, he tried like 3 or 4 times for running for it. Chester A. Arthur?
Yes.
I put him on the list because my father was born when Chester A. Arthur was president. That tells you something about me and my father as far as generations are concerned. Let's see. Fill in the blank. No? What?
New Mexico?
New Mexico, and right next to me, New Mexico. Arizona. 1912, I believe. One came before the other. I don't know which. If you want to Google it, you can. I don't really care. But earlier in the century, in 1904.
Nevada?
Huh?
Is it Nevada?
No?
South Dakota?
A state that a lot of people thought, they said it could never become state because of all those people there.
Utah.
Not Utah. Utah had become a state in 1890 something. What? Oklahoma. Oklahoma was held up because of all the Indians. The idea of having a state that was more than 50% made up of Indians was a little, brought about delay in Oklahoma being admitted. And of course that was question has been raised with our 49th and 50th states. In Alaska, do the native people outnumber the non-natives? And in Hawaii, it's clearly natives and immigrants, first and second generation Chinese, Japanese, make up the majority of Hawaii's population as well. We are running out of time here. Well, a little bit. Here's easy questions. Who gave our country the Statue of Liberty? What country? France. Who sold Louisiana to the U.S.? France. Who sold Alaska to the U.S.? Russia. What country invaded the U.S. during the War of 1812?
British Canada.
England or Great Britain or the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it. It's the only country that's ever invaded our country in our history. What country ceded Florida to the U.S.? Spain. What country attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941? Japan. I also remember that date. I was in the 4th grade. Ms. Lois Hitchcock was my teacher. And she asked us to draw. We heard about the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. And I drew the best picture, and it was posted on the bulletin board. Or at least she picked it out and put it up.
Did she ask you to draw?
Our impression of what the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor looked like. Horrible. I drew Japanese Zero planes come crashing, zeroing in on Pearl Harbor.
Did Japan invade Alaska in World War?
Yes, they did. Did you hear Marlin says in the Second World War, Japan did occupy at least two islands in the Aleutian chain for several years. I think they were basically abandoned by the Japanese when they saw the tide was turning against them. Because I think we woke up and found the Japanese had gone. They didn't know they had given up. But it didn't influence too much the outcome of the war, I think. All those other little questions, you can get a maximum of 50 points on this. And if you are short and missed any of the other stuff, you can make it up with one or two of these points over here. Non-contiguous, what does that mean? Not touching. When two states are non-contiguous. Okay, now you've got the cartoon. That's on the uses of history. Not a definition of history, it's on the uses of history. History is used. The map. A lot of people can't even find, most of them can find Florida. I don't know how they manage that. Huh? Two states, I believe, hold the prize for having the most states bordering them. Well, you want to make a guess which two states they are? And they are side by side. And the number of states that they have borders with, contiguous with?
California, New Mexico.
Nope, they don't have it. 1, 2, 3 states. Let me tell you, I think it's about 8 bordering states. And I think there are 2 of them side by side that have 8 other states bordering them. Just look at it for a moment. What? I can't hear.
Somewhere out west.
No, it isn't. What? No, it's right in the middle of the country. Well, not the middle. It's really sort of southern. Kentucky and Tennessee. All those states north of the Ohio and all the other southern states around it, they have more borders than any other state. Here's a little quiz from you. I came from Georgia. If you drew a straight line from the southernmost point of Ohio, can you find the southernmost point of Ohio? If you drew a line from the southernmost point straight to the northeastern point of Georgia, you're actually, as the crow flies, by that straight line, you'd go through about 8 or 9 different states in less than 300 miles. No, let me change that to the westernmost point of South Carolina, because you go through a little tiny hook of Georgia. That makes it, let's see, South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, and West Virginia, originating in Ohio. Which has the most northerly border, the state of Washington or the state of Maine? I think that is incorrect. I believe the 49th parallel falls north of the northern border of Maine. If you follow that arc across, I believe it would. Okie dokie. The one thing you have to know about maps is scale. I volunteer at Niblack School in the first grade, and we are teaching the meaning of the word quarter, 1/4. They have trouble understanding that 1/4 of an hour is 15 and 1/4 of a dollar is 25. Why is that? Well, the question that relates to maps and scale. If we drew a map of this room on a scale of 1 to 1, how big would the map be? It'd be the same size as the room. So what's the use in such a thing unless you're planning to buy carpet? So maps have scale, and it is a proportion, and you must get that sort of fixed in your mind. And you've got different scales for Hawaii and Alaska. In the case of Alaska, they've had to make it a higher or smaller, depending on what term you want to use, to get Alaska inserted down there. And they've enlarged Hawaii scale compared to the rest of our country. A different scale was necessary to get it on that map. Oh, I didn't say, you will have map exercises during the course of a number of them. I also like geography, and I took some graduate courses in geography. And one of your questions on your first test, coming up in several weeks, will be in what ways did the geography of North America influence the colonization, settlement, economic activities, and so forth of to what degree does geography influence what happens? Geography is the stage on which we act out our history, but our response to it may vary. My answer is, the simpler the culture or civilization, they are more likely to be influenced by their geography. a very advanced culture, highly technological, have learned to overcome and control and regulate in various ways their environment. Florida was very sparsely populated until the Second World War, when it boomed. What invention changed that, and what event changed that? Air conditioning and the Second World War brought incredible growth to the state of Florida. If air conditioning were taken away from our culture, I think geography would change us. I think it is changing us, and that sort of edges on the question of climate change. We are changers, and history is the study of change. And I think I'm going to sort of close it off with about that today, unless somebody has some question. Don't forget to buy your blue book. Oh, we never defined state and nation, did we? First two terms, three terms on this. Got to give you the definitions that I use. A state, and because we are a union of states with divided sovereignty. Do we have the word sovereignty on there, or sovereign? Sovereign means unchallenged. There is no one above them that can challenge their authority. But sometimes that's a fiction. A good many of our states say they are sovereign, this and that. And maybe in their constitutions there are a few things in which they are sovereign. But the nature of our union is that we have yielded, and we have over history yielded even more powers to our national or central government, or as Henry Clay liked to call it, our national government or our central government. The difference between a state is a piece of geography that is governed by a particular sovereign power, whether that's a king or a democracy or whatever. It's a physical thing, but with boundaries. A nation is a psychological thing, is a mental concept. The people, it comes from the word born, from the Latin word for being born. A nation is a group of people who think of themselves as having something in common that holds them together, that they coalesce. And it's a good thing if a nation occupies the same piece of geography that their state does. And that's called a nation state. And a lot of wars have been fought over where there were discrepancies between the boundaries of a state where the government was extended its power or its sovereign authority, and the nation, the people who felt themselves kindred, occupied some territories outside that boundary. That's called something irredenta, unredeemed. Wars have been fought over that. I think I've talked myself down. Anybody have a question? You were given the 6 topics for your first essay test. I call those silver dollars. Everything coming up. Chapter 1 we have on Thursday. I won't be here, but read the first chapter and you'll have a 3x5 card. Every time you come, when you've had a reading assignment, you'll be asked to do some questions based on that reading on a 3x5 card. And that'll be the attendance check. And this is your attendance check today. Okay? And that's it. And thank you, and we'll hope to see you on Thursday.
Very good.
Where's your 3 by 5 card?
To go fill out my 3 by 5.
Well, then you're not here. You're not here.
I'm not here either. I'm doing right.
I don't have a record of your attendance.